The Push 2 is my favorite device or instrument that I've ever owned. I've had the Monologue, the Minilogue, the Minilogue XD, the Prologue 8, the Prologue 16, the MS-20, Poly 6, the Drum Brute, the Drum Brute Impact, the Mini Brute 2, the Mini Brute 2S, the Matrix Brute, the Mini Freak, the Micro Freak, the PWM Malevolent, the Nord Drum 3P, the Moog Minotaur, and the Prophet Rev 2. And if I could only keep one instrument for my music making for the rest of my life, it would be the Push 2. This. Obviously with Ableton, right? So I know for a lot of folks, people are trying to get away from screens all the time, and the Push 2 is not standalone, so it needs to be connected to a screen so that you can utilize it. The desire to get away from screens has inspired things like the Orchid synth or some of the devices from Teenage Engineering, SP404, DAWless, modular, semi-modular, all that kind of stuff. And I get it, I work in IT and I spend 40 hours a week attached to a screen. So when I go to make music, I'm not really feeling inspired to open up another screen. So it makes a lot of sense. And that's why I got this. And it is a 6.5-foot USB-B to USB-C type cable. This allows me to do a couple of different things. One being that I can power the Push without any other cables. Two, it gives me 6.5 feet away from my screen or my computer so that I can just allow myself to be immersed within the Push. And then lastly, when I'm working in that mode or capacity, I'm normally able to get about 80% of a track sketched out without ever having to look at a screen. I know that this isn't necessarily for everybody, but for me, this provides enough distance so that it feels like I'm working with a standalone device, but it also reduces that friction whenever I do need to pop back over to the computer and there's something that I can't do here that I'm able to complete, right? Does that make sense? I know another reason why some folks may be turned off from using something like the Push over hardware is the sound or their perception of which sounds better. I did a side-by-side comparison with Ableton's Wavetable and then the Dreadbox NYMPHES. I did a comparison with a single sawtooth oscillator, and then I also just did a filter sweep with a single note and a chord. And maybe you can take a listen and see if you can determine or tell a difference between the two of them. I couldn't. If I didn't go back and watch this video where I was indicating which one was which, I wouldn't be able to tell. That's just me. Were you able to tell a difference between the two of them? Could you tell which one was Wavetable and which one was the NYMPHES? I couldn't. So synth A was Wavetable and synth B was the NYMPHES. To me, they sounded pretty close. If we're just talking about drafting ideas and just capturing inspiration, I don't necessarily think that I need to also bring an analog polyphonic synth around with me when I have Wavetable. Listen, it sounds good. It sounds really good, okay? Okay, well, why don't you get a Push 3 or an Ableton Move? At some point, I'm probably gonna get a Move because I just think it's cool and inspiring, and I love that it is an Ableton device that can go in your bag and completely get you disconnected, but I don't think that it's necessary if you already have a Push 2, right? So let me show you my little workaround for sampling on the go. Okay, I recognize that I'm being a little pedantic with this, but if you are really committed to just using the Push 2 without looking at your computer and being immersed in the experience of using the Push 2, you can get samples into this device without using your computer. And I want to show you a workaround or a workflow that I've come up with so that you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to grab my phone here and I'm just going to open the sound recording app on my phone and I'm going to record a sample. Blah, blah, blah. bloop, bloop. I've got my samples recorded in here. Press this little button here, and then I'm gonna select Share, Save to Files. On my iCloud drive, I have a field recordings folder. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pop this in here, and I'll hit Save. Also, I would like to say that the irony is not lost on me that I'm avoiding using my laptop screen while looking at my iPhone screen. Can you just hang out with me? All right, I'm gonna go to Add a Track. I'm gonna go to MIDI track, go to Instruments, Simpler. I'm gonna load an empty sampler. Press Browse to load a sample. And then over here on this side here, if we select Sample and go to Device, we can see everything that's in your library. I'm gonna go to my kits folder, which is my iCloud drive folder. I'm gonna select this, and I have my field recordings folder here. So effectively, I've been able to record in on my phone, and then from my phone, I can then upload it to my iCloud drive and then load it into the Push, which feels pretty seamless. It's better than using the Voca sample tool to get your samples into that device. In this mode here, I'm gonna go to Slicing. Bloop, 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 bloop. If you don't like that, then don't talk to me. The next thing I want to talk about is the tactile feel of the Push 2. And I know for a lot of folks that conversation between a MIDI controller and the tactile feel of hardware can be a deal breaker for some folks. But for me, I don't know what it is, but there's just something about the Push that is different than any other MIDI controller that I've ever used. And I know that it's just mirroring what is on my laptop, but it feels like the items are inside of the Push. It's like amorphous, like I can't really explain what it is. But for instance, if I'm working with Wavetable or if I'm working with one of the effects in here, it just feels like the items are here in the Push. I don't know, just for me mentally, it feels like the items are in here. And oftentimes whenever I'm using something like this, an external device, I'm using the Push anyways to control this. I may often map parameters, CC values to the Push, so I'm already used to using the Push as a tactile feel anyways. And listen, I get it that this there's something nice about that. Let me show you something. I'm gonna show you something real quick. So I made an instrument. It's 2 wavetables, so it's sort of like a bitimbral synth, right? And then I've mapped a couple of different parameters with this single knob here. I should have two cameras, but I don't. So this is what we got. So I'm gonna hold this down. This doesn't feel any different than if I built a patch with this and I was moving one of these knobs or one of these knobs. Yes, right? There's something for that, right? I built this patch and I came up with the ideas for the parameters that I wanted to map to that macro. And to me, it almost feels more mine than maybe something that I would get in hardware. You know, right? That's different for different folks. But for me, this is more inspiring. The Push came out in November of 2015. And as of the recording of this video, it is May 29th. And just last month, they have released firmware updates for the Push 2. So we're talking almost 10 years later, and they haven't given up on this device. And as new instruments come out, they're still being supported on the Push 2. The Push 2, you can get one on Reverb for like 300, 350. If you search around, there's good deals. Even if you go to Guitar Center, the Push 2 at certain places. You can get them for relatively cheap. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go buy a Move or you shouldn't go get a Push 3 if that's something that you want. But what I am saying is if you are an Ableton user and you're looking to get a dedicated controller for Ableton, don't sleep on the Push 2 because it's sick and it's still relevant in 2025. It's my favorite piece of equipment that I have for music making. Okay. I dropped an EP last month. It's called Descent. It's on my Bandcamp. I have a whole bunch of other music on my Bandcamp, and if you get an opportunity to listen to it, I'd be super grateful for it. And have a good day. Bye.